for Curtis Winfrey, Sean Winfrey, and Mr. Chauncey Strong. I want to do a brief introduction. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone, in your breakout sessions, please complete surveys for the conference. They're available in the app. If you can't access them through the app, we can send them through you via email. But it really is important to have your feedback on sort of the breakout session, so we can make sure that our conference events are useful to all those who attend. So this afternoon, we're fortunate to have 3 people on our lived experience panel that are survivors, quite frankly, of the foster care system. And it's not lost on me that we also have, 3 very successful black men who have overcome a tremendous amount of turmoil in their lives to be incredibly successful individuals. So I want to introduce first Curtis Winfrey. Curtis is currently employed as a violence interrupter with the Richmond City Police Department. Curtis, yes. Curtis has a long history of being interested and involved in supporting child welfare reform. He has his own lived experience that you will hear today. Next, we'll hear from later today. He is someone with lived experience as well. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Chauncey.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be with you all today. Excited to be a part of the panel. Excited to be a part of the conference. I'm also glad to be here with Sean and Curtis today. I mean, we're going to hear a little bit about their experience. And what I really like about it, I just want to reiterate again, it's happy for me to see, again, 3 black men on the stage talking about child welfare and the importance of child welfare, successful black men in child welfare doing a good job. So I'm excited about that. The other thing, this was my first time getting a chance to meet Sean and Curtis together, and so I did not realize how big these brothers were. So I feel very safe and secure. I'm just making a joke here. We won't have any Will Smith moments right here, because if you walk up here, you're going to be, I'm just joking. I'm joking. It really is good to be here with you all, talking about kinship care, talking about families and the importance of family. Dr. Sharon McDaniels, did she not do an awesome job? Can we give it up for her one more time? She set the stage for what we're going to talk about today, and that's the importance of kinship. And specifically, we want to hear from those with lived experience and their experience on kinship care. So on that note, I'm just going to ask Sean and Curtis, we're going to just have a conversation. We got some questions here. We're going to have a conversation. There might be some nerves up here, but I just want to let them know they're in front of a friendly group, right? We're a friendly crowd here, right? Awesome. We're going to spend some time with the questions, and then at the end, we're going to give you all a chance to ask a question yourself. What I'd like to try to do, though, is we do have cards on the table. If you have a question specifically you want to ask Sean or Curtis, and what you can do is write it down, hold it up, and then we'll have somebody come out and collect it. And then right towards the end, maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes, we'll see if we can answer any questions. Now, the one thing about doing this panel during food is that people are going to try to eat. They need to eat, right? So be aware of your forks clanging and all that good stuff, so that make sure we can hear everybody. And I want you all to be able to really pay attention and hear the depth and breadth of these young men and what they're bringing to this panel. So without any further ado, I'd like for you all to just tell me a little bit about yourselves, and then tell me a little bit about your foster care experience. And Sean, we're going to start with you.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Sean Winfrey. So a little bit about myself, became interested in foster care and social services in college. I originally went to school for music, and when I got to my college, I realized I couldn't do in that, so I began studying psychology, and then I finished school and minored in social work. Then I began my work career and pursued social work in that way. I originally was in foster care in 1994, and we stayed in foster care for, I want to say, at least a year or two, and then we were returned home, and then we went back into foster care around the age 9 and 10 for me and my brother, and that experience was a lot longer and a lot different than our very first experience.
Yes, hello, I'm Curtis Winfrey. I've been doing the work for about 10 years now, volunteering. The last 5 years I've been doing it professionally. And what sparked my interest was my lived experience, having to grow up and not be connected with family. I said, I need to do something to bring more awareness so that kids who don't have a voice like I did can have a voice. So I just used my experience to bring awareness to folks working in the field to try to make it better for the up and coming generation.
Can you all talk a little bit about, do you remember the number of placements that you all had, where you all placed together? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for me, I was placed in what they call therapeutic foster care, and this was really concentrating on the 9-10 experience. So from 9 to 10, I was in foster care to the age of 23, all the way through college. And through that experience, I had at least 7 or 8 different placements.
And for myself, I had a little bit of a different journey. Given my size at a young age, they felt that it may be better for me to go to, residential services and group homes rather than maybe stay with my brother and go to a foster home. And it just, it really helped me grow into the man that I am now, having to go through different living arrangements, having instability, going from group home to group home and from residential to residential. It really just made me cautious of, establishing relationships and opening up and kind of getting rooted out of the fear that if I make these relationships today, tomorrow I could be moved. So yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your relationship with your brother. And let's tell a little bit about how was that relationship in terms of when you were separated from each other. What was that relationship like? And talk a little bit about what did the worker do to really ensure that you all maintain contact and a relationship with each other? Yeah,
that's a big piece. Unfortunately, me and my brother were split up when we went into foster care. I was placed in Red Hill or North Garden, Virginia, and my brother was placed in Richmond, Virginia. So getting family visitation with him was very difficult. The worker had to come all the way out to North Garden, which is about 45 minutes from Charlottesville in a different direction, and then transport me all the way to Richmond for him to visit us for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then that individual had to take me all the way back to North Garden and take herself home. So, and that individual was Miss Darian Hall, who was a wonderful worker, absolutely wonderful.
Give it up for Darian. That was a nice shout out for you, Darian. Thank you. First, talk a little bit about the relationship with your brother and the importance of staying connected.
Yes, sir. And for me, being in a group home, the relationship, I've always had a connection with my younger brother, but being in a group home, a lot of the visitation and interactions were more privilege-based. So I kind of had to level up in the systems to have home visits with the relatives and with my brother. So early on, it was hard, just adjusting to a new environment. But once I, bought into the program and earned my levels, having my visits with my brother was a big part of my success. It almost became my driving factor. As long as I'm doing good, I get to see my brother every now and again. And I really didn't want to jeopardize that being separated from my family and my brother. So my whole goal was to do whatever I needed to have those visits with my brother. And again, Darian Hall facilitated those visits and really made that possible for us.
One of the things when we think about kinship care, and relatives, we are thinking a lot about the adults, right? So we're thinking about the grandmother or the aunt or the uncle, where they're kin as well, right? The siblings are kin. And so you all know my own personal story, having that relationship with my brother and how important it was. And I was glad to see that workers took the time to make that happen. The other piece that we were all talking about is that, the visitation is a right of young people in foster care and not a privilege. You shouldn't have to earn to see be good enough, and we will allow you to see your family. It should be that it is a right that you have. We can look at other consequences, but it shouldn't be pulling you away from your family. So thank you all for sharing a little bit about that importance of your relationship as brothers. To your knowledge, how was your family engaged while you were in foster care? What did the social worker do to make contact? What was that like to your knowledge, family engagement?
So for me, in terms of family engagement, to my belief, initially there wasn't much done. There was no contact with my family. For me, it was just, working the program, getting my levels, graduating. It wasn't until I aged out of foster care and I requested my foster care file that I was informed that my aunt had, made a request to social services that she may be willing to take us in. But unfortunately, upon review of the living arrangements, it was deemed that our house was too small, so she couldn't, take us in. So, we ended up in foster care and group homes.
So just a little bit more about that. So you had to wait until you were out of foster care to find out this information. So did you have much interaction at all with your family while you were in care?
So I did have interactions on home passes and visitation on the weekends. When I got my levels, we were able to go to the family cookouts on, Thanksgiving and Christmas. But no one, to my knowledge, no one ever, reached out to those families and say, hey, would you guys be interested in opening your homes to Curtis and Sean?
If you don't mind me asking, what was that like to find out that you had an aunt that would have been interested in having you and caring for you in the home, to find out so many years later, well after you're out of foster care?
So, my aunt had made comments to me that she had tried to bring us in, but, seeing it on paper, reading the emails really set it in stone. It made me hurt a little bit. It almost to the point where it's like, maybe I shouldn't have worked the system. Maybe I shouldn't have cooperated. Maybe they would have discharged me and I could have went and lived with my aunt. But it hurt me knowing that there were family members who were willing to, keep us unified and together. But unfortunately, she just didn't make enough, didn't have the means.
Dr. McDaniel just talked about that as well, sometimes the barriers we put up. Sean, what was that like for you?
My experience was very similar but different in a way because I was placed in foster care. So unfortunately, my parents' rights were terminated for me. So the goal for me originally was to return home, but that never happened. And that goal stretched out for 3 years. And, in between that, we have together collectively 12 uncles on my dad's side. And one aunt that passed away in 2000. So there was a surplus of family members that could have and would have and maybe should have taken us in, but the opportunity wasn't there. And then on the other hand, just staying connected with our community. We have family friends. I had a friend that I grew up with. I was very, very close with. His mother had contacted DSS in attempts to get me to come live with her, and that request was denied as well. So the connection to kinship was really estranged and it just wasn't there, even though there were opportunities for it.
You all were in care a while ago, and I wish I could tell you that we have come such a long way, and we no longer do that anymore, that we no longer make it difficult for relatives to have young people in their home, but it still can be difficult depending on what part of the state you're in, and I work across the country, depending on where you are in the country. So we've made some strides, but there's still more to make, and I appreciate you all just kind of talking a little bit about your experience. Dr. McDaniels talked a little bit about that youth voice. And having young people tell us what they want and listen to what they say. A little plug here, I'm doing a workshop right after this on youth voice and engagement and permanency. Come on over to the workshop, Ballroom C. Listen, so what I want to talk about is, you all tell me a little bit about your voice. Did people talk to you about what you wanted? Did you understand what your goal was when you were in foster care? Tell us a little bit about that youth voice and your engagement or lack thereof.
So for myself, I would say my voice was doing. I spoke through my accomplishments, making it to the Hall of Fame at my high school, playing at a high level. I wish I had a voice in my treatment. in terms of my plan was to return home. So I was working the program thinking I was going to return home. But the flip side to the working to return home is, based on the emails, Curtis is doing so well where he is. If we send him home, will his progress be hindered? But I'm thinking if I do the work, I'm going to go home. But by doing the work, I was stuck in foster care for a long time. And I just wish someone would have sat me down and just said, hey, Curtis, what do you want? Because I would have told them, had they informed me that you can't go home, what would you like to do? I probably would have asked to have more focus put on my football career. But that there wasn't any input, so I was forced to, work the plan that was written for me.
Let me talk a little bit about that. I mean, I heard the gasp in the audience, right? That our young people are told one thing, but something else is really happening behind the scenes. And again, I wish I could say, Curtis, that's a long time ago. We don't do that anymore. But the truth is, we don't engage our young people the way we should. And you have every right to be fully aware what your plan is. It's your plan. At the end of the day, it's your life. And so you're working a program, working hard, thinking you're going to achieve something that was written, you say in an email, right, that he's doing so well in care. Why would we mess that up? That's the sense sometimes we get. And so then you're working really hard towards a goal that really was never, ever going to be achieved. If you don't mind, if I'm pushing too much, what was that like? What was that like when you had that kind of that revelation?
So when I was going through it, I was just going through the motions, but when I'm reading it, it made me angry because I look at where I could have been in life. I'm happy where I am now. I'm doing a great job in life, but I just imagine where I could have been had the proper avenues been explored, had I had a little say in my treatment rather than just people having a say in my life.
Thank you. Sean, tell us a little bit about your experience and your voice.
And my experience, my voice was very limited because I was younger. I was told I didn't have an opinion until I was 14. So at 11, all I knew is I wanted to go home. And often the way I explain it is, when the goal is to return home, in my mind, it's just blind loyalty. I don't care what my parents did. I don't care, what wrongs they committed. At the end of the day, I'm going home. And so adversely, that affected how I performed in school, how I performed in self-confidence, how I performed in just regular life. And eventually, reality struck, and I'm not going back home. And it just felt like it was a perpetuated lie. My parents continued not to meet the requirements, yet I was being told that, 6 months from now, you're going to go home. And all the while, folks knowing that that wasn't a reality for me. And so I felt like I was stringed along just so I could continue being good and staying out of trouble in that way. And so unfortunately, when I turned 14, it was all too late for me. And, temporary, my parents' rights were terminated. So, and that was the end of my journey of my belief of going on, which was really devastating for me.
Again, one of the things you said, and this is just a fallacy of our system, is that we have that magic age of 14, that when they get 14, when they get 15, when they get 16, we have to focus on what we like to call our independent living services, because we can't focus on family at that point. Sometimes it's about young people who say, I don't want to go home. Other times it's other reasons are given that we don't even know why, but young people are not going home. And so we have that magic age of 14 as if that's that time that we need to immediately start with independent living. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the presentation, but young people need independent living and they need families. Young people shouldn't have to choose between family and independent living. They need absolutely both, and we need to work diligently for that. Sean, again, what was that like for you if you can remember, even like how we talked about this even in the moment, like what that feeling was like when you realized that you felt like you were just being strung along?
I felt robbed. I felt deceived, and part of the reason was because I started doing what was asked of me. Make sure you're complying, make sure you're following the rules of the foster care system. In terms of the home that I was staying in, respecting the person that I was living with. I felt like I was doing all those things, and and then it just felt like the carpet was snatched from underneath me. And the truth is, had I known I wasn't going back home earlier, I probably would have committed to doing those things earlier as well, versus knowing after the fact. You know, maybe I could have made some more positive decisions prior to.
And I don't want to put words in any of your mouths, but just listening to you all talk, it sounded like even with all of that, you all could have easily made a decision to forget the system. I'm gonna start acting out. I'm gonna start doing whatever I want to do. Y'all not sending me home anyway. Was there something that kept you all, because you turned out to be great young men, right? It could have easily gone another way, very easily. Can you talk a little bit about what was it that made you continue to move forward in a more positive way, which it would have been understandable if you had not done that?
So it's funny that you mentioned that, being a violence interrupter, working with the youth. I always tell them where you are now doesn't dictate where you're going in the future. So for me, I think back to where I was. I looked at my peers, my family, and I just wanted more for myself. I didn't want folks to feel sorry for me. I didn't want to feel like I was like a charity case. So I used all of that as motivation. I excelled in the classroom. I excelled on the football field. And now I'm excelling in my personal life and my career. And it's just taking that adversity and making it into a positive. It's so many of my peers that I came in the program with, and I'm looking at them now, and they don't have the same good fortune that we have. And I just wish that, hey, maybe they could have had the people in their lives that I had in mind for the time that I had them. And I'm also thankful for the time that I had with my mom and dad, because ultimately, even though we were taking that 10, those first 10 years, they gave us enough for us to go out here in the world and survive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say for me, when I hit that 14-year-old mark, I realized I can't go to my uncles, I can't go to my aunts, I don't have my mom, I don't have my dad. There was just this strong feeling of loneliness and being alone. And I had to make adult decisions at 14 of what my life was going to look like. I had to decide, whether, this is going to be my reality forever, or if this is going to be my kids' future. And, that changed at that point. I really just started working for myself, because there was no safety net. There was no one in my corner to push me through. So I just journeyed it on my own.
One of the things you mentioned about your family as well, we were talking about this at the table right before we came up, that young people, no matter what is happening in their situation, even in sometimes the most horrific abuse, young people would go back home. I said to myself, they done messed up all of our good work. We've been working hard to keep them from home. And they ended up going back home, because that's where they find love. That's where they found connection. And you say, even for the first 10 years, that was a good thing. I also, though, am glad that you all had each other, right? So your connection wasn't completely broken. You all had each other. Let me get back on track. Listen, let me go to the next question here. Tell us a little bit about the relationship now with your family. You all talked a little bit about some gatherings and things like that. Talk a little bit about the relationship now, and then talk about the impact that it has on your identity and even culture not being with your family.
So for me, with my family, my relationship with my brother is a lot stronger. With my mom and dad, it's a solid relationship. There are some unprocessed traumas from going into foster care that we haven't resolved, but we're working through it. In terms of like my uncles and aunts, there's a big disconnect there. mainly because they don't know us. You know, they saw us at, 7 and 9, and then we pop back up at 24. So there's not the traditional family values. I got married, and I sent all my family, invitations. I have a huge family, and I, sent out 200 invitations. And a lot of them didn't show up. And it's not that they didn't want to come and see me get married. It's just that they didn't know me. It's almost like you get invited to a coworker's baby shower. Hey, like, I'm being honest. Hey, do I want to go? But had they saw me grow up, came to my graduations, they would have gladly came to my wedding. So I just look back and I miss those relationships. I miss having uncles and aunts. I wish I could call my uncle and say, hey, uncle, can you give me some marital advice? But I just don't have that connection with them. We're almost like associates. When we come to the family cookouts, it's just like a distant relative. Hey, how is everyone? But there's no love there.
Just on that note a little bit, I think about what you said. The last time you saw them, you were 7. Then next thing you know, you're 19, 20. It's truly that from boys to men. Like I saw you when I was a boy, and that's what I remember you as. Now you're a grown man now,
Yes,
and that the distance that was there, the pieces that were missed between there. Sean, what would you add to that?
I would add there's in every family there's culture within the culture, right? We're not a part of that culture because we don't know it. We don't know the lingo that the family uses. We don't catch the inside jokes that the family uses. We don't deal with our emotional traumas the way that our birth family deals with their traumas, and it's very obvious. So when we have conversations with them, it's ha 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 ha. Okay, talk to you later. It's no deeper than that. And so at 33, we have no safety net. Like our family is me and him building a new network of relationship for our kids because we don't belong in the family system that we originally were born in because we have missed 17 years of relationship and kinship. And it's no different on our maternal side of the family. When we go to a funeral, we most of the time sit in the back because the faces are so strange to us, and we don't want to be offensive to our own family because we weren't connected. And it's a daily reality for us that we can't even have these conversations with them because we don't want to be offensive to our own families that we were stripped of. So that's our reality.
I think part of one of the reasons I was intrigued when this panel was pulled together, because I'm usually having a panel with young people that just come out of that care the last year or 2, 3 years or whatever, and we can see the impact that we've had on them. But the impact of foster care can be lifelong. So here you are now in your 30s, and there still is an impact that was had that you did not have that connection with your family. I do want to say something here as we're talking about this. This is not to shame anybody. It's not to beat anybody up. It is to make you aware of the practice that we had so that we can continue to improve what we're doing. It's nothing like going somewhere and you feel like you've been beat up on, but you want to walk away at least a little more informed, a little more sensitive to what am I doing to the young people, because this is the product of that. And in spite of all of that, can we give it up for them again? They're doing well in spite of all of that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask them one more question. If we do have questions, if you want to write them down, we're going to take some time to do some questions here for that. We're well ahead of schedule. I'm going to ask y'all one more question before we get to the words of wisdom. Let me just ask you, what do you, just in general, wish would have been different in terms of the connection that you have with your family, the opportunities to stay connected? Your family said a little bit of it. Just say a little bit more. Just specifically, what do you think could have been different? What would have been helpful for workers to know that if this could have been different, I would have had a better relationship with my relatives?
Well, for me, I wish that they would have, sat me down and say, Curtis, what do you want? Are there any, family members that you think may be willing to take you in? Are there any families in the community that you live that may open their door to you? And I feel like if they worked on those family connections, I would have a stronger bond with my family now. But I'm still thankful for the bond that I have with them. I'm still thankful for my journey. I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but I'm actually thankful for my foster care experience because I look at where I am now, being the first one in my immediate family to graduate high school, passing the torch to my brother. He was the first one to go to college and graduate, so we broke down barriers. And I don't think we would be where we are looking at our trajectory had we stayed where we were. I don't think we would be the men that we are today. So I am thankful for my journey. I'm thankful for the relationships. I'm thankful for the nights sitting up crying because I couldn't see my brother. I'm thankful for the days when Darian came and took us on road trips to have visitation. We went to Roanoke for his state wrestling championship. I'm thankful for all of the memories. But I would just say to you folks listening, spend time getting to know your clients, the children, and asking them, is there anyone in the neighborhood or family that they may want to live with? Because we can save a lot of work for you guys if you just ask us what do we want, ask our opinion.
I'll say that one of the things I said to them, I said, we want to have some water on the table. We want to have some tissues just in case somebody gets emotional. And it's me. I'm the one that's getting emotional listening to these young men talk. I think one of the things you said, and we talked about this when we were doing the prep for this, is that sometimes you go through things that is not for you. While you're in the situation, it's also for somebody else. And so if you can take that as a learning experience, say, okay, I went through this, this is what I can get out of it, but what is the impact now that I can have on somebody?
Today, I can't fathom not reaching out, and that's just my dad's side. My mom has six siblings. That reality just kicks me in the butt every time. I think about it. There's no way all of them 20 plus people said no.
If I may, I will say now, working in the field, volunteering, giving back, the workers are doing more work now. So I do want to say thank you to everyone here who's doing the work. You guys have came so far from when we came in till now. So I want to give up for you guys. Just clap it up for you.
And we have miles to go before we sleep, right? There's so much more that we can continue to improve in the system. One of the things that I think about when I think about you all, and again, if you have any questions, just let us know. We'll have you can raise your card, is the resiliency factor of young people in foster care. Some of the most resilient people you will ever meet, young people that have been in the foster care system. And the other side of that is too bad that they have to be resilient. Too bad they had to go through what they had to go through to get to this point in their lives. On that note, in terms of, if you don't mind, in this point in your life, how does this experience in foster care maybe even shape your family, your marriages, or I know I want to spill the beans, but I know you've got a little one, and so how does this shape your experience now with your family?
I create barriers at this point. My ultimate goal is to protect my family and put them forward in any way, in any capacity that I can. And so what that looks like is, making sure that, they don't experience the same traumas that we did, even if it's within our own personal family. So putting safeguards around them and then improving our relationship. Me and my brother's relationship didn't really start developing to what it is today until about 3 years ago, if you can consider that. Because even though when I graduated, I was in Charlottesville, he was still in Richmond. So now we're both in Richmond, and we have that opportunity now to build a stronger relationship. But I'm 33, he's 35. We're just now developing 34. We're just now developing the concrete foundation of what our relationship will look like and what our family success will look like. And that's what our priority is.
And for me, I just try to, be the man that I wish that I had when I was growing up. It's a funny story. We've opened our home to our niece, and I'm super. Thank you. I'm super protective over her. Super. She had went to prom. Well, not prom. Homecoming. And she was standing there with a young man, and I just pulled up on him. Hey, young man, what's your name? And she was like, oh my God, Uncle, you're embarrassing me. And I just said, hey, he has to know that you have someone in your corner looking out for you. And it's just, being able to step up and offer that kinship placement for my niece is weird, because I never imagined that I would be in a kinship care position, having not been able to experience kinship care as a foster child. So it's just, making myself aware, educating myself, and educating those that I come in contact with, being a violence interrupter working in the communities, you can kind of see the signs. And when I meet families, I kind of open up to them about my journey and let them know, hey, it's okay to ask for help, because it's going to come in your home and take your kid away from you. And in our community, a lot of families suffer and go without out of fear that if I ask for help, I'm going to lose my kids. And we have to do something in the world to fix that, so parents don't have to live in bad situations out of fear of losing their child. They should be able to say, hey, I need help with my 2 kids, and we come in and give them the help and not take their kids from them.
Give me a hand for that. I think that's all time. I'm so aware of our time. I'm going to ask one more question, and this, I think y'all can still work with me on this one. One of the things you all talked about is that, especially with the family or lack of family connection, is that every connection to me seemed to be about a placement. Can they place these young men? And so would there have been some value, even if you couldn't be placed with your family, to have still a connection with your family? What are your thoughts about, even if those people that couldn't place you, would there have been some value in your life to have at least a connection?
That they can at least call and say, hey, nephew, how you doing? Or, call and say, hey, nephew, can we go, and get a lunch or something like that. We don't get that. It's silence, and it's the same thing for my foster parents. Well, for my foster parents, I've had 8 of them, and they don't check. They don't check in, they don't call, they don't ask for baby pictures, they don't do any of those things. When I say we are literally by ourselves, no safety net, that is us. If I get sick and I'm out of work, that is really hard on my family. And I imagine it's the same for my brother.
What was the question?
So just, even if they couldn't have been a placement for you, would you have wanted to have a connection with your family, even if they couldn't place you in the home? And then you kind of talked about, again, the impact of it even now.
If I'm being completely honest, then I did want a relationship and a connection for them. But now that I'm older, it's hard to miss what you didn't have. So yeah, it would have been nice to have a connection with my uncles and my aunts, but it wasn't necessarily for me to be successful. I miss those connections with my cousins, but I'm thankful for the connections that I have through foster care. Garrett's like an uncle. He came to my wedding. He checks in on us. Miss Darian Hall's like an auntie, a mom. So they filled those voids that were left naturally from going into foster care. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, let's give a hand to them as well, right? You never know the impact you're having on our young people. And I won't steal Garrett's thunder, because I think he talked about he was grateful that he could be there for them in their lives. But too bad he had to be that for them in their lives. And I won't steal your thunder. I know you. Did you want to say anything about that, Garrett?
Yeah, I can share, some of my best memories early on as a clinician. I was an in-home worker. I met Curtis, met Sean shortly thereafter. Obviously their family was struggling a bit. But when I reflect on, gosh, the times I was in the house with your mom and your dad and you guys, and the love and the affection and the laughter and all the positive things that were in place, when I reflect on that now, it's easy for me to see why these two are so resilient. But then there is it's hard for me not to get emotional when I think about it. It's been my pleasure to be able to go to their weddings and see them today. Like driving over last night, I couldn't wait to see them because there are always lots of laughs about, like they say I used to pick them up and I'd never let them beat me in basketball.
Never.
There may have been a time or two, but just the memories like that and the laughter, just the time we spent together, but it shouldn't have been me. And I do wish that I could go back in time and repurpose my time in understanding who was there to do those things with them that I so enjoyed, but I knew they were temporary. I knew that, Curtis and Sean weren't going to live with me. I wasn't going to adopt them. Our time was incredibly valuable to me, and I love them dearly even today. But I should have used my time differently. And I hope, when you think about your role as a change agent and the importance we place on the relationship with clients, it is critical, but our relationship is so fleeting. And to know that there were 15 uncles there, I should have been calling the uncles.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Still looking for these tissues. I got my handkerchief ready, though. And so, because again, that and so while we're not going to, use any names or anything like that, tell us a little bit about the experience you are having as it relates to your kinship situation.
So currently, my niece lives with us. She had some issues at home, and the agency had reached out, said, "Hey, you guys have been recommended as a home placement option for the child in question, and would you guys be willing to open your home up?" And it was a no-brainer. Of course, we would love to have her come live here, and we went to court, and the judge gave us like custody. They said that it's rare that the judge would just sign custody over to individuals, but they did. And upon moving in with us, we asked what was the plan, and there is no current plan, but she's doing really well with us. But unfortunately, she's doing great. She made the honor roll, but we aren't able to receive any support because if I'm understanding it correctly, we did not let her go into foster care. She came with us, so we're not eligible for any resources. We're still going to love our niece. We're still going to provide for her, but it would be nice if some of the burden didn't fall completely on us. It would be nice to, she has, kids these days are allergic to gluten. Like, what? Like, what is gluten? But with having these different allergies, she doesn't eat the same food, so we have to, modify the grocery list, and it can get a tad expensive, and a lot of that falls back on us. So what I would like to have happen, or wish would have happened, if we would have been fully informed, the options, and kind of a way to navigate the process, so at the end of the day, my niece can have all the resources that's available to her to go out here and lead a successful life. But she's still going to do that. We're going to do what we need to do, but I feel like somewhere, somebody dropped the ball.
It stems from your question this morning to Dr. McDaniels as well. And when those things happen, we have to find a way to figure it out, right? And so we have to find a way to make sure parents have information. There's somebody in your situation that would have said, no, I can't do it. Financially, I can't do it. And then maybe an option would have been offered. Oh, well, what about X? And this is not, again, to shame anybody, but we have to learn from these mistakes. Because when we're making mistakes with people's lives. And there's some mistakes you can take a pencil, let me get going here. There's some mistakes you can take a pencil and erase that thing. But there are other mistakes, you can't erase that. Once the mistake is made, it's a consequence that it has for young people in care. So thank you for sharing that, and it hit right onto your point. Let me ask another question here. One of the questions says, it says, how do you feel now as you are working in the system that maybe caused you harm? Like, how is it for you to work in or around the system, even being on this panel, and you know the harm that it did cause?
So for me, it's empowering. When I walk in some of these rooms and folks see me, I smile because, well, to me, I thought I wasn't supposed to be here, but my supervisor said, no, Curtis, you are supposed to be here. It's empowering for me. I actually went and worked at one of my old residential placements. I did a 30-day stint there, and I had to leave because I thought that I would come in being an ex-resident, I'll be able to make change and help the program grow. But coming in as an employee, I was exposed more to the, hope I'm politically corrupt, the corruptness of some of these placements. Yeah, clap it up, it's out there.
What about you, Sean? Any thoughts in terms of like the work that you've done? Because I know you've done some work directly with the system as well.
Yeah, so for me, I do this work so that I can help that next individual. When you go through turmoil for such a long period of time, you got to think we were in foster care for 15 plus years. Eventually, you make peace with that demon, and you stop letting it affect your mood, your mind, and I made peace with that somewhere between 15 and 17. So now when I go into this field and I look at kids that are fostering futures or kids that are making uninformed decisions, my thought is, how can I challenge that and help these young individuals be mindful of the resources that they have out there, be mindful of the resources that are within the communities that are supporting these young individuals to make better choices. And then continue to support them for the ones that do decide to go to the next level and go to college. It's unbearable that 1% of our kids go into college from foster care and then graduate. Like, that statistic, it just blows my mind. Like, these kids are not able and capable. If I could do it, so could they. And I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. So, so
Pretty sharp now, brother.
I'm working on it. But I think that rate has to go up as well. There's no way I can live the lifestyle I live without attending a 4-year college. I didn't have a trade. I didn't have a dad to inherit a company. I didn't have these resources. So I had to make my lifestyle out of what I'm capable of. And so many more can do the same thing.
Yep. And one last thing I want to say in terms of why I do what I do. I was in an independent living program, and I looked at some of my peers. Part of being in independent living, you had to have a job, right? And they took part of our paychecks and put it in a savings account. But what they don't teach you in independent living is credit. They don't teach you how to apply for housing. They don't teach you how to balance a checkbook. The small things in life, they don't prepare you for. So I would like to bring awareness to, educating young folks on the scary horrors of being an adult. Because for me, when I turned 21, I was introduced to a whole new world. But I was prepared for it because I took those steps leading up to 21 to be able to, have a down payment for my apartment, to be able to buy my first car. But so many folks, 18, they can set you out. You're a man now, you're an adult. And if you're lucky, you can hang around till 21, if you're lucky.
No, that's powerful and that's deep. One of the things I will say is that we have gotten better as a system in terms of giving young people the independent living skills, independent living services, but services will never replace people. Services, no matter how many services we give you, it will never replace the impact of family. You know what I mean? So that's a skill. That's awesome. We should be doing that. That should be what but in addition to that, we also got to make sure we stay connected to family. Here's a couple other questions here in our time. You all talked a little bit about this, and you used the word trauma, but and you talked about the coping skills that you all use as you were like dealing with and living with trauma. And I'll say a little bit on my own experience. One of the things that happened for me, I went a long time not denying that I wanted to know my biological family. And I remember thinking, they don't love me and I don't love them. They're not here, they're not caring for me. And I said, they don't love me, and so it was easy for me not to love them. And for me, my coping skill was, I feel like there are times in life you have to tell yourself what you have to tell yourself to get to the next stage in your life. You got to tell yourself what you got to tell yourself so that you don't go crazy thinking about something that you can't even control. So for my coping skills, I'm not saying it was the best. It got me to where I am today, but I kept just saying, they don't love me, and that's why, so it's no big deal. What kinds of coping skills did you all use, and either now or even as you were getting in foster care, dealing with some of the trauma that you may have been dealing with?
So a big coping skill for me, being the gentle giant that I am, was football. When I first started, I was real timid because I was told, you can't be angry. You don't want to be the big, angry black kid, right? So I kind of played football real timid. And then my coach was like, Winfrey, this is the one place where you could, excuse my language, hit a motherfucker in the mouth. And so
We'll take that part of the video. Okay.
So I'm like, but once I, realized that I could just take all of my stress from not being home, not being able to see my brother, the chaos of being in a group home with 7 other crazy individuals, I could take it all out on the football field and there's no consequence. You're telling me I could knock this guy's helmet off and not get loss of privilege? And so football became my outlet. It became therapeutic for me.
That was a therapeutic way and a good way to get it out, right? Your coaches were probably very happy when you realized you could do that at that size,
He
right?
was.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you, either now or even dealt with trauma that you might have been dealing with?
Yeah, so sports was definitely an outlet for me too. I did pretty well in wrestling and football myself. But it took a strong individual, a really, really strong individual to challenge me with intensity. And I think that's part of the field that I think we are missing. A lot of us are afraid to have intense conversations and meaningful conversations with our youth. It's okay if they yell, it's okay if they cry, it's okay if they punch the wall. You have to be present and strong enough as an adult to stand in there. And fortunately, I had someone that do that for me. Her name was Carolyn Grant, and she was my very, very first foster mother, the woman I consider to be my mom in a lot of ways, because she used to tell me, you cannot go out into the world angry, son. And she would make me stare at myself in the mirror. She would ask me questions. When I asked about going back home, why can't I go home? Why can't I go home? Well, she would ask me questions that didn't have a yes or no to it. She would ask me questions and make me answer them. So, what are your parents doing? Open-ended questions. What are your parents doing? Did they comply? Did they go to drug treatment court? Did they do these things? And I would have to be honest with myself and ask. And then I have to self-reflect. And that was a cleansing of its own. Being able to, you don't have to tell someone their reality, but just simple questions. And then being there for when the volcano erupts. I don't need someone to run when they see my anger. I don't need someone to run when they see my pain. I need a hug.
Listen, this is almost like a viral moment. You just have to be present, is what he said. And this is where, again, where I fight against, not against, because kids need independent living, but independent living can't be presence when you need a hug. There's no job that's hugging you. There's no school that's hugging you. You got to be present with young people, and you have to engage with them. Again, so one of the other questions, we got a lot of good ones here. I'm trying to figure out the best ones to ask. One person the statement says, separation doesn't equal safety. Just because
being torn away from our brother, it's like we almost lost our identity. And I feel like, honestly, if you have a foster family and they're not willing to take in 2 siblings, they probably shouldn't be foster parents.
Okay? In other words, especially when we know that there is a high number of siblings out there. And so, okay, thank you. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, so believe it or not, we actually have another brother. His name is Marcus. And this is what happens when you separate siblings. Me and Curtis have vastly different lives than my brother. My brother is a criminal, and a very good one. I'm telling you, don't leave your car, your wallet, nothing around him. He might get you. But and we still love him the same. But he tells us when he gets mad, he says, "I feel like a black sheep because I've been stripped of my culture from my family." And although I keep my wallet near me, I love him to death. But that's his reality, and he feels ostracized. And we were torn apart at a very young age. In psychology, 9 and 10, you're still able to be remolded. Miss Carolyn did it for me. So you can't convince me stripping 2 preteens, essentially, from each other and making them go in different directions. I never understood why CJ was never with me. I never understood it. It never made sense.
Well, I'd like to bring a little clarity to that. Like I said, upon aging out of care, I requested my foster care file. And one of the reasons why, encourage your kids to get their file.
Absolutely.
Encourage your kids to get their file.
We're going to talk about that in room C right after this. We're going to talk about youth engagement and young people having access to their records. Please go ahead.
And upon, reading my file, the reason why we were separated is Curtis is a large black kid for 10 years old. 6 foot, 10-year-old kid. There was, what do we do with him? He's so big. If he was to get angry, who would calm him down? And just reading those emails, I'm like, these people had no clue who I was. And I get that in life now when I walk in the building, 6'5", 300 pounds, people are like, oh man, he's huge. But I'm a gentle giant, and I wish had my social worker took 5 minutes to sit me down, she would have known that I was a scared, frightened, traumatized young boy trapped in a grown man's body.
Very powerful. Whew. All right, this has been great, you all. This has been great. I'm looking at our time. The last comment thing I'll ask you all, and then ask you for your words of wisdom. One of the questions says, thank you all for sharing your story. Would you be willing to encourage other young people who are going through the same thing? Is there an organization, a way that we can contact you? It'd be great for them to hear your story. And so I guess we can make sure there's contact information. If I believe they'd be willing to come and talk to your town, to talk to your children, to talk to your youth. And I think there's an empowerment there that happens. Last thing, we got 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Give me any last words of wisdom, something you want people to walk away. You said so much already, but give me something that you want people to walk away with today.
Well, I would like you all to walk away with the thought that there's a Curtis and Sean on your caseload now. There's an individual right now in a group home working the program who's trying to go home, who plan may not be to go home. Let him know, sit him down and map out his future. There's a Sean out here who, may be going to college, help them get the resources so that when they graduate, they're not stuck paying $50,000 in student loans. There's no reason, in my opinion, that a kid can, work the program, go to high school, graduate college, and be forced to pay $50,000 for education. I mean, that's all I have. I mean, at least we can do is get a free education.
Last comment.
My closing thoughts and remarks would be to aftercare. This reality for us took place 15 plus years ago. And I will say this, when I was 20 years old, I decided to go to college, tried to make something of myself. At 23, my funding was cut. Luckily, legislation came out and pushed Medicaid to 26, but I almost didn't walk as a senior because I couldn't get my books on time. And then the other part of it is holidays, guys. Like when kids turn of age and they go to that after part of foster care, where do they go on the holiday breaks? When the school says spring break's over and you gotta leave the campus? For me, it was my car. I don't have a family. So think about these things for your kids that are in fostering futures that are trying to make something of themselves. and providing them resources. I had a foster family said, hey, their bed is always going to be open until it wasn't. And so just be mindful, be present, be helpful, be a Darian, be a Garrett. If you're that committed, be a Darian, be a Garrett, because we don't exist without their support. And I'm not saying you got to be a lifelong coach or whatnot, but be present in those times that it's meaningful. That's all I got.
Wow. So this conversation was on kinship care. We talked a lot about kinship care. We talked a lot about sibling relationships. We talked a lot about being present for young people in foster care. If these were my mics and I would just drop the mic, because these young men have already said it. Can we give another hand for Sean? Can we give another hand for Curtis? Thank you all so much for doing this. We appreciate you. We appreciate everything you've been through, your willingness to share this story, to share this stage with me. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.